course, you're praising the beloved in all its manifestations. And this disconcerts some people terribly. I've always noticed that real sages never gossip, never criticize persons. And because they understand so well. The French saying, tout comprendre, c'est tout pardonner, to understand all is to forgive all, is so true if you are experienced in just the ordinary way of dealing with human problems. If you've been a counselor or psychotherapist or minister or anything like that, you very soon get to realize how vastly complicated people are, and to see that they really are in the messes they're in, not because of anything.
You see here a figure which is apparently, as you look at it, two faces in profile about to kiss each other. Now, if we draw back a little from those two faces, we can see on the white area in between them the form of a cup. But the interesting thing about this is that as you look at it, you will either be able to see the form of the cup or the form of the two faces in profile, as it were, about to kiss each other. You can alternate them between them very rapidly, but you will not be able to see them both that way at the same time. Avidya, which meant means non, vidya, knowing. Non-knowing or ignorance, or better, ignorance. Ignorance, in other words, leaving something out of account. Either the white must be the background and the black the figure on the ground, or else the black must be the background and the white cup showing up on it. And so in this way, we are unable to see really, we can think it. After a while we can get accustomed to the idea that the figure and the ground, the black and the white, are mutually necessary to each other. In that figure that I showed you, you could say both the cup with the stem and the two faces are there. But our ideas about them, our concepts, are mutually exclusive, and we cannot see them both at the same time. And in the same way, in this figure that I drew, we either see the sawn-off stumps or the bear claws. It's difficult to see this figure both ways at the same time. When you're looking at the white figure in that illustration, which is the cup, you, as it were, identify with the cup. When you look at the two faces, you identify with the profile. So in the same way, when we experience the world around us, we identify with the subject, the knower. We don't identify with what we see. But as a matter of fact, if there is nothing seen, there is no experience of a seer. If there is no seer, there is no experience of anything seen. They both go together in the same way as the black and the white. And this idea that the yes and the no, the black and the white, the inside of a class, say we draw a square as representing fundamentally the idea of class. I can't have a square which doesn't have both inside and outside. They go together. And in Buddhism, this going together is called shunya. Although this is often translated void, it means that the inside of the square cannot exist, is void without the outside, the subject without the object, the black without the white. And this, of course, is represented in this fundamental Chinese figure of the yang, or the positive principle, and the yin, or the negative principle, like two fishes, constantly circulating, going round and round and round and round in the alternations of life. Now, the question is, are these two fishes involved in a fight? Is the white one eating up the black one, and the black one trying to eat up the white one? If that is the situation, then of course life is fundamentally nothing but a grim contest. If this one up here is the good fellow and this one is the bad fellow, if this is order and this is chaos, then a fight goes on between them. And that's largely the way in which our technology has interpreted man's situation as against nature. This is man, the white, the good fellow. This is nature, the dark, the bad fellow. And the white one has got to eat him up. But what happens if the white fish succeeds in eating up the dark fish? The white fish disappears as well as the dark one, because the white one is only there in relation to the dark. So then, if these two fishes, as it were, wake up, if this one wakes up and this one wakes up, which is called awakening in Buddhism, they realize they're one. In other words, they go together. They're inseparable from each other. And this realization is that experience, which is called in Zen Satori, or in Buddhism Bodhi, awakening. This sudden dawning on our consciousness that life is not really a contest to make yes triumph over no, to make the positive triumph over the negative. The two sides go together. And then one sees in this strange way that underlying all that is negative in the world, all that is in a way painful and evil, there is a kind of necessity to it. It goes with the good. It is necessary for the good. Disorder is necessary for the manifestation of order, just as you must have, say, a black background to show up a light figure. And then when one sees that, a profound transformation takes place in one's attitude to the world. That is to say, instead of looking upon life as a contest, it becomes a dance, it becomes a game. One doesn't withdraw from it, one doesn't stop living, but one goes into the game so that these revolving fishes are no longer trying to eat each other, but they're just going around dancing, having the biggest fun in the world. The organization of human life, its systems of communication and systems of control are extended more and more and more in just the same way, for example, that by assimilating the minerals out of the soil and the rays out of the sunlight, a plant like a fern grows and grows and grows and extends its form. And in this way, its organization prevails. Now then, you see, if you take this task of what we call the conquest of nature, the task of making order victorious over chaos or randomness, if you take this seriously, you will look upon it as warfare. And you will firmly believe that the most urgent thing that there possibly can be is to make order prevail over randomness, to make good prevail over evil, to make life prevail over death. And we find that when we are in a contest of this kind, a serious warfare game of this kind, and we take it seriously, we are involved in it in a very deep and bitter sense. Now, the difference of Buddhism from science as a form of knowledge is that in Buddhism it would be said that this view of things, this view of the task of life as making order triumph over disorder, leaves something out. So then, must we have fixed in our minds the idea that all the forms and patterns of nature are simply methods of attack or defense, that they're devices for camouflage, that they're simply lures for sexual attraction or other utilitarian purposes? Or can we see in them a dance, a joyous cosmology? Let me see.
Are you God all the time? I mean, in consciousness all the time.
There is no time, my dear. It's always now.
At every precise moment. In
Oh,
consciousness, are you
yes, if you put it
God?
that way, of course.
You are consciously God.
Wait a moment, consciously, not necessarily, because that would spoil the fun. If you press button surprise, you've pressed a button so that you forget who you are.
Right, so that you don't always know all the answers to a given problem.
Yes, that's perfectly true. This is called, in the Bible, kenosis. He says, "Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who, being in the form of God, thought not equality with God a thing to be grasped, but humbled himself, and made himself of no reputation, and was found in fashion as a man, and became obedient to death." And so you get from this the kenotic theory of creation, held by some of the Greek fathers, that the creation of the universe is the self-emptying or self-forgetting of the Godhead. Because the universe is fundamentally a system which creeps up on itself and then says, "Boo!" And then it laughs at itself for jumping. And you see, every time it does it, it forgets that it did it before. So it never becomes a bore. Yes, the lady in red.
Can you make yourself into a point of consciousness and travel around the cosmos?
Yes, but it isn't necessary to travel. One is already there. In other words, I'm using your eyes where you are, like you're using mine. Just in the same way, my head is not my feet, it uses my feet. The head is very different from the feet. You couldn't possibly say the head and the feet are the same, but they are one organism. Yes.
Would you say we're going around in circles trying to eliminate evil? Because we never will. There might not be any evil.
Yes.
Never eliminate it, so we're just playing games.
We are going round in circles. But you see, going round in circles, as you may have observed by looking at the sky, is what the universe is doing.
As long as we recognize we're going around in circles, we're all right.
Yes, that's the thing. It's a dance. And when you dance, you don't dance to get somewhere.
But one of the biggest problems in life is being forced to earn a living at something which is not what I would rather be doing. There is the answer to move somewhere and live on less money and do the thing that I would like to do, or must I resign myself to do the thing that gets me the bread and then in my spare time somehow try to make up?
Well, there are two sort of answers, one of which you've already indicated, which is to do with less and do what you want. What is the alternative to clearing out of the job you're doing? Well, there are ways of making almost any activity into a dance. Supposing you had to drive a bus in New York, you must not take seriously anything about it. It doesn't matter a damn if you don't get there on time, but it would be fun to go as fast as is consistent with safety. And therefore, you swing that bus, and you play things with the horn. You take the whole thing lightly, as if it is not serious. And because, and this is the nature, say, in ritual, when you have a procession. Now, people who don't understand religion don't know how to make the right kind of processions. There are those who go a military march, and they don't understand it because their objective is to get there. There are those who dawdle like ducks, and they don't understand because they are trying to be dignified. On the other hand, there are those who walk as if they had already arrived. And this is the way kings walk, because a king is the center, and he is always where it's at. Where it's at is where the king is by definition. So, if you work in this way, anything monotonous can be treated in the same way.
God omniscient.
Is God omniscient? Well, it depends what you mean by the word. A lot of people think that omniscience is like knowing everything that's in the Encyclopedia Britannica. That's not omniscience, that's intellectual elephantiasis. The thing is this: what we ordinarily call knowledge is the translation of life into words. And that is a very cumbersome process, because if we had to translate the process into words every time we took a breath, we'd never get around to it. It takes so long to describe and think through the whole physiology of breath. Therefore, we do it without thinking about it. And I find that I'm shining the stars in just the same way. I mean, if you want it in words, it's going to take us a long time to get through them, because words are strung out in a line.
Eternally we are, and we are all gods. How come I find such difficulties finding peace and tranquility within myself?
If you are God, how do you find such difficulty in finding peace and tranquility in yourself? That's because you're looking for it away from the place in which you are. You are seeking it apart from the experience which you have at this moment. But the trouble with that is that it splits you in two pieces. And once you're split in two pieces, you're lost. Because you've made a difference between the experience you are now having on the one hand and yourself who is having it on the other. And you wish you could get away from that experience. Now, the truth of the matter is you can't, because you are what you experience. You think you want something different from what you have. But if you do think that, you've got to ask yourself the question, what it is that you really want. This is the most fundamentally important question. And you will find, if you go into it very, very deeply, that you have it.
God, if this place caught on fire, I would find myself so scared. If I am God and scared, what do I do about that?
Well, one of the ways of not being bored is to scare yourself. We go to the movies just to be scared. Indeed, before we go and say, well, this isn't really going to happen, it's only a play or a movie. If you see, after all, the task of the actor on the stage is to come on so well that the audience thinks it's real, so that he has them crying, so that he has them shaking with fear, so that he has them sitting on the edges of their chairs. Well, that's just one ordinary Joe Dokes actor, but supposing the actor of the play is the real big actor. Wow, that play would seem real. And so that's what happens when the house catches on fire.
God, what is sleep for you?
What is sleep? The seventh day. When you sleep. What is important about people? This is the great West. Is there unique individuality? And we have been given an immense psychic investment in our own individuality by our upbringing. What are you going to amount to? What are you going to contribute to human life? What's your particular destiny going to be?
You see, every one of you feels the center of the universe, and that everything else is happening around you in a circle. You can turn around and you can see sort of equally far in all directions, especially if you're in a ship in the middle of the ocean. So you're in the middle. Here's a ball. What point on this ball is the center of its surface? You can see at once that any point can be the center of its surface. So legitimately, all points in the universe are the center. So everybody's in that situation. And at that depth of your existence, we are all like the nerve ends on your own skin. See, at every point on your skin, there's a little nerve end going beep and getting information from the outside world. Another and another and another, all over. And they all constitute your total sensitivity. So in the same way, when all these people sitting around here, with their little eyes and little ears and things, they're going peek, and they're all really one common center called I, which is looking at itself from ever so many different points of view. Only we are so close to it, and we are so absorbed in the different ways each one of them is doing, that we neglect the community underneath. If in other words, someone from an entirely different form of biology came to this planet and looked at us, he wouldn't know the difference between Negroes, Greeks, Armenians, and white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. They would all look to him exactly the same. He'd look at a group like this here, and he would call it a thing. What is transmitted all the time is the repetition of pattern, the repetition of certain rhythms. You should all study, incidentally, the drawings of a great Dutch artist by the name of Escher. He has a book